When I first came across this story about Mark Longo and Peanut the Squirrel, I actually had no idea what the hell it was. Hmm. When I first came across this story about Mark Longo and Peanut the Squirrel, I actually had no idea what the hell it was. It actually first reached my attention through Facebook. I was just scrolling one day, and in one of these groups that I'm in, there was a meme there, and it was one of these Barbie memes. And it was like from the Barbie movie. And so Barbie, played by Margot Robbie, and Ken, played by whoever it was. What's his name? That hot guy that all the girls all thought was hot from The Notebook. Probably should be able to remember this. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But basically, Barbie was asking Ken, it's like, what radicalized you, Ken? And Ken was saying, they killed Peanut the Squirrel. And when I saw this thing for the first time, I had no idea what the hell it was. I tell you the truth, I actually thought that what they were. I misread it entirely, and I thought that like it said like they killed the the peanut butter squirrel, and it kind of made me think about the brand of peanut butter that my mom used to buy for us all, my siblings and I when we were kids. And it was literally like squirrel brand peanut butter, and this always came packaged with there was like a peanut that was kind of nestled like right on the very top surface of the peanut butter. And we would all fight over who could get to the peanut butter jar first and have the peanut that was nestled on top of this peanut butter. And so I thought maybe they just like discontinued the mascot or something. I don't actually know whatever happened to that brand. I don't really, these days I just buy Kraft. I haven't really paid much attention to it. I don't know if that brand is even still around, but I thought to myself, maybe they discontinued the mascot. And sometimes it's kind of fun to pretend to be mad about those sorts of things. And at first, that's what I thought that whole story was about. And then, of course, I paid a little bit more attention to things that were going on over the next few days. And no, I discovered it wasn't about that at all. It was actually about something that was legitimately pretty horrible. And so for anybody that for any reason might not actually be in the know, I mean, this is basically what the story was about. There's a guy in New York, his name is Mark Longo, and he runs an animal sanctuary on his property. And he had taken in, this squirrel, actually several years ago. Like this had been going on for quite a long time. And he had this squirrel that he had found this thing orphaned, and it couldn't survive on its own in the wild. So he took it into his home, and he basically raised it like a pet. And this thing was extremely popular on Instagram. There were all sorts of videos of this squirrel just like eating waffles with him, and every so often he would dress up this squirrel. Just like a great relationship. And man, I'm actually like kind of jealous. I would love to have a pet squirrel. I have a simmering jealousy of anybody who has ever managed to have a pet squirrel. Um, I would love that. I don't know how you actually go about like even like luring a squirrel close enough that you could even try to tame it, let alone actually tame it enough that you could actually have it live with you in your house. But I know that it's been done because there's the Instagram. I don't know if you would call her an influencer, Lisa Mancini, and she had pet squirrels. Like, so and then they actually apparently if you raise them indoors, like mostly indoors, they actually get pretty big. They get to be like the size of like small cats, which does not make it any less appealing. Perhaps in my naivete, because I mean, I'm sure the people have seen the amount of damage that a cat can do when it's out climbing around all over things. And cats don't climb literally all the time, but I mean, squirrels do. So I imagine these squirrels could be pretty destructive. So maybe it's kind of like a naive idea to think that you might want a pet squirrel, but you know what? I'm going to continue to be a little bit naive about this. I think that I would like to have a pet squirrel. But anyway, that's man, am I ever rambling? So let's kind of get back to the point. So according to the stories that I have read about it, apparently there was somebody literally the entire country away in California that decided that they were jealous of the amount of attention that this pet squirrel was getting on Instagram. This woman was apparently, she was some kind of like photographer or something, and she couldn't get the kind of views on her Instagram stuff that this squirrel got. And apparently she was telling her friends that she was going to get this squirrel. And from the sounds of it, she did. The story that I have heard is that she called animal control in New York, and then they showed up at this guy's home with a search warrant, and basically like they took his squirrel and they took his raccoon, and then they pretty much like took them straight to the shelter and euthanized them. So just basically took them out of the home and then basically killed them before like there was even any possibility that that anything could even possibly be done about it. That's just comes across to me as just very, very underhanded and sneaky and devious and malevolent, quite frankly. And that does seem to be like that seems to be the popular response to this whole thing that went on. And so, obviously, Mark Longo, he was devastated about the death of his two pets. I mean, especially Peanut. And it came across in these videos that he had a wonderful relationship with this pet squirrel, with Peanut the Squirrel. And so he was absolutely devastated, and he went on TV to be interviewed about it. And of course, he was very emotional, and he even cried about it. And a lot of these lunatics that got swept up in this whole thing, I mean, keep in mind that this was right around November 1st, so just days before the election. And you get like these people on social media, and maybe now more than ever before. Maybe this is something that always happened, and maybe we just didn't notice it as much. But there were a lot of people that kind of took to social media, and they decided that they wanted to politicize this, almost like an issue in the election. I remember seeing one tweet on Twitter. I will never call it X. I'm never going to do that. Sorry, Elon. Sorry, Daddy Elon. I'm never calling it X. That's never going to happen. But basically, this tweet, this post, whatever you want to call it these days, basically said like, "Oh, the mega squirrel deserved to die," right? And of course, there are also all kinds of posts by people that were making fun of Mark Longo for being on TV crying about this pet squirrel. And it was like he was supposed to be ashamed of having shown any kind of emotion about it. Like it was very unmasculine for a grown man to go on TV and show emotion over something like this. And the thing that really stands out to me is that the people that took that particular attitude towards it, obviously these people are a bunch of morons. People that have no business, trying to talk about masculinity, because I'm going to break it down, quite simply. Mark Longo is an alpha. It's the entire point of what I'm trying to talk about in this segment of the podcast. And I think it just took me 7 minutes to actually get to it. Like I buried this lead for 7.5 minutes at this point. But regardless of how long it took me to actually get to this, the point stands. Like Mark Longo is an alpha. And I'm sure that a lot of these idiots are going to sit there now and they're going to be like, oh, but he cried on TV. He cried on TV. How could he be an alpha? Anybody that doesn't understand why Mark Longo is an alpha are these same bunch of people that really that think that being an alpha male is all about being like an Andrew Tate and being a predator. People that have kind of disconnected themselves from literally like 5,000 years of human history, where we moved away from being like the hunter-gatherer thing, from actually being predators in the wild and actually built civilizations so that we didn't have to go out and do that anymore. In the modern evolutionary, this modern evolutionary stage of human history. An alpha is anybody who builds something, or anybody who leads in the building of something. And not only is Mark Longo building something, in the terms of in regards to this animal sanctuary that he runs on his property, that apparently the authorities in New York State, once they got this ridiculous complaint, they just couldn't bear to see exist. But not only is he building something, but he is building something that is legitimately beautiful. And that I think that all sorts of people that made this thing popular on social media, obviously they understood that. It was very appealing to thousands upon thousands of people. And ironically, the people that destroyed it, the people that colluded to destroy it, and the people that applauded while this thing was being destroyed are literally the same people who seem to, decry the very concept, that something like an alpha male could even exist. Not even really probably yet figuring out that really the whole idea of like being an alpha is definitely not, it's definitely not exclusive to males. Like women can be alphas too. As a matter of fact, I've even already said that. I've even already said that on this podcast before. Months ago when I talked about the whole Hannah Baron thing, and I talked about how she's an alpha. She's an alpha. She's leading in the building of things. And again, kind of like Mark Longo, she leads in the building of, very beautiful things, at least in my opinion. But, there were people out there that really, they couldn't stand to see that thing exist. That very beautiful thing exist. So what did they do? They kind of descended on it, almost like a, for lack of any better, historical example, like almost like, some kind of like a deranged Mongol horde, and just like insisted they had to destroy everything that was beautiful about this in sight. And people have definitely not, people have not responded to that very well. These are people that would probably sit there and be all like, oh, well, you're saying he's an alpha male and that's toxic. It's like, no, motherfucker, you're toxic. The fact that you would be that bothered, by just the existence of this extremely beautiful thing that this guy and his wife were building together on his property, to go out of your way to destroy it. I mean, like, man. As I understand it, the woman that actually called this thing in the first place, like, according to reports, since then, who knows if it's still going on at the same pace. Maybe she's kind of retreated off of social media so that, this kind of stuff can't reach her anymore. But, word is that she was getting a lot of death threats. I don't think that I would encourage anybody, to go out and make death threats against this woman or against anybody else. But you know what? I think I do understand how it could be that this is the kind of person that the vast majority of people just do not want to share this planet with. So while I don't think that I would ever encourage something like that, I can't pretend. I can't pretend like I don't understand it. I very much do. And I could almost see myself being pushed, if enough of this crazy shit continues to go on. I could see myself being pushed into a mob like that. I mean, I'll tell you this much. If these people ever try to come for Lisa Mancini's squirrels, they come for me. And best of luck to you, if that ever happens. Because you're coming for me, and I'm bringing hell with me.